Welcome to Feeding the Future, a podcast that identifies the issues of world hunger, its effects, and possible solutions. And even though this is a global issue, in today's episode, I'll be talking about the hunger crisis in a specific country, and that country is the Central African Republic. However, before we start, let's first talk about world hunger on a broader level. Global hunger is a severe problem made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic's effects on vulnerable people. We won't be able to meet Sustainable Development Goal 2, which is zero hunger by 2030. The severity of this issue is shown by the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World 2021 study, which projects that between 720 to 811 million people were hungry in 2020. One of the reasons for this is that the world's food security is affected by price fluctuations due to historical movements in the global food markets and economic crises. Global policymakers must address the issue of world hunger because it is a basic human necessity. I will go over the key players of interest, the contextual factors, some research questions, policy intervention, and finally, a policy solution. So let's begin. Key players of interest. Many organizations are fighting world hunger, but I will focus on the United Nations for today's episode. Aligned with the second Sustainable Development Goal of ending world hunger by 2030, the United Nations is aggressively tackling global hunger through programs like the Zero Hunger Challenge and Food Systems Summit. The UN strategy entails international cooperation and precise goals, like eliminating stunting in children and ensuring everyone has access to enough food and sustainable food systems. UN agencies like the World Food Program, World Bank, Food and Agriculture Organization, and the International Fund for Agriculture Development all make significant contributions. These groups combat hunger by fighting poverty, implementing sustainable resource management practices, being there for disaster relief, and investing specifically in agriculture. The United Nations works with these agencies to build sustainable food systems, better nutrition, and a world without hunger. Another key player of interest is the countries affected by world hunger, including Sierra Leone, Liberia, South Sudan, Somalia, and more. But again, because there are so many, in today's episode, I will focus on the Central African Republic. Regarding human development, the Central African Republic was second to worst in 2018. It is believed that 79% of the 4.7 million people in the nation are impoverished. The Central African Republic is home to at least 3 million people who are in need of humanitarian aid. Contributing reasons include low productivity, poor markets, and significant gender inequality, which are made worse by recurring cycles of political unrest and instability that disproportionately affect women in rural communities. Moving on to contextual factors, since world hunger is a large issue, many factors affect world hunger. For example, climate change. Variations in weather patterns, extreme events, and environmental deterring, particularly in sensitive areas, can have an impact on crop yields and food production. Lack of access to resources. It can be difficult for individuals to survive and produce enough food for agriculture if they lack access to proper land, water, and credit. Unstable markets and prices. It can be challenging for the people of a nation to afford a sufficient amount of food when the global food market is unstable. Limited education and healthcare. Lack of access to healthcare and education can impede people's ability to earn a living and keep good health, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and hunger. Inefficient agricultural practices. Outdated or inefficient farming methods may lead to decreased output and food shortages. All these reasons affect world hunger. However, due to time constraints, I will go in depth on poverty and the unequal distribution of food. As I mentioned earlier, 79% of the population of the Central African Republic lives in poverty. A political coup in 2013 resulted in severe ethnic bloodshed and a 39% decline in GDP. Since 2014, a protracted internal armed war has wreaked havoc across the nation, forcing countless number of people to evacuate their homes and severely impairing essential social services. To put it into one sentence, the Central African Republic is poor because of violent crime, military instability, and a plethora of other reasons. Before discussing the unequal distribution of food, it's good to discuss how we measure food insecurity. The Food Insecurity Experience Scale, a worldwide reference scale, is the tool used by the FAO to measure food insecurity. The two leading causes of food insecurity are too much food, quantity, or insufficient quality and variety. Due to unequal food distribution within and between countries, there are pockets of hunger, even in locations where there is a general excess of food. The factors I just mentioned are the reasons why the Central African Republic is one of the biggest countries that are affected by the world hunger crisis. Now I'm going to talk about some research questions I had along the way, and in my opinion, this is the most interesting part. Question 1. With so many organizations fighting world hunger, why does it still prevail today? Even though there is many organizations, there's a multitude of interrelated problems, including poverty, inequality, violence, climate change, gender discrimination, and poor health and political systems that contribute to the fact that millions of families worldwide cannot afford wholesome food. Number 2. How much money do we truly need to end world hunger for good? Now, this is an interesting question because if you couldn't already tell, poverty is arguably the biggest reason for world hunger. The UN says to feed everyone on the planet and put an end to world hunger by 2030, we will need $40 billion annually. Question 3. Do we have a shortage of food or do we need more food distribution? No, we don't have a shortage of food. In fact, we produce so much food to feed everyone on the planet. However, unequal access and an imbalanced distribution are the results of systematic inequality and economic disparities. Number 4. If we solve poverty, will it lead to the end of world hunger? I believe that if we rid the world of poverty, the issue of world hunger will decrease by a large amount. Again, while there are so many reasons for world hunger, poverty is, in my opinion, the biggest problem. So if we can get rid of that, it could definitely help rid of the crisis. Final question. Will world hunger ever be solved? The golden question that everyone wants the answer for. And the answer, again, goes back to financial support. The UN and other organizations need money to end world hunger. So if enough funds are met, then I truly believe that world hunger will decrease and eventually not be an issue anymore. Now let's talk about policy intervention. To battle persistent shortages of food and eliminate world hunger, governments, non-governmental organizations, and world leaders from all sectors must work together to find creative solutions. By being able to cultivate or purchase their food, communities can become more resilient to food emergencies in the future. To feed the 783 million people who go hungry every night, we need to make significant changes to the global food production systems. It's time to reevaluate how food is produced, shared, and consumed. Effective management of our industries may make a larger contribution to the world food supply, even in the face of catastrophic climate change, widespread armed conflict, disruptions in food imports, and many other obstacles to ending world hunger. World hunger should be on the top of every list for issues around the world because we as humans have the right to food. The right to food, in all its forms, is a human right that defends people's ability to feed themselves with dignity. It implies that there is enough food accessible and that people can get it and that it sufficiently satisfies each person's nutritional needs. There are people who believe, more than poverty, the issue of world hunger lies in human rights, which is certainly debatable. Finally, my solution to the crisis of world hunger. The solution would stem from the liberalism point of view. I would have increased agricultural output, better distribution networks, and international cooperation. These methods have all contributed to the recent dramatic decrease in world hunger brought by global initiatives and technical developments. With the globe moving closer to sustainable development goals, there is hope that hunger won't be a significant worldwide problem. However, these suggestions would likely be seen as very optimistic by many people. I hope that this episode, which focused on the Central African Republic's issue, offered a nuanced analysis of world hunger. In order to transform food systems and promote resilient communities, it has stressed the necessity of cooperative policy action through analysis of important players, contextual elements, and research topics. The universal significance of the right to food was emphasized by the human rights perspective. The liberal solution offered was hopeful but realistic about the difficulties. In the ongoing battle against world hunger, The conclusion calls for continued international efforts, financial support, and a dedication to understanding the underlying causes of poverty and inequality. Thank you for listening.